My thoughts, or some thoughts, on Mike O'Hearn. Well, I've talked about what's his name, David Goggins. I've talked about David Goggins before. How I think that he has motivated some people to get out and work. But he's obviously on steroids. If you don't think David Goggins is on steroids, you just don't understand how the human body works. You can't do what David Goggins does if you're not on steroids. It just doesn't work. Yes, people can run ultra marathons, but they can't do it all day, every day, and maintain muscle mass like he does, and just be a general badass 24/7, 365 like he apparently is, allegedly is. You can't do it without steroids. Just like Dan Bilzerian can't be a millionaire playboy without his daddy's money. It's all a lie, right? Mike O'Hearn is no exception. It's the same category. You are putting yourself out there to be this type of leader, to be this type of charismatic, beacon of motivation, which is fine. If it motivates people to get to the gym, that's awesome. You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, if people are motivated by you and they go to the gym and they get in better shape and they get healthier, you're a net positive. You just are. You're a net positive. Is Mike O'Hearn honest? No. Has he ever been honest? No. Does Mike O'Hearn have good advice? Yes, absolutely. Does Mike O'Hearn oftentimes say great stuff about bodybuilding and how to exercise? Does he have good insight? 100%. Absolutely. Yes, the guy has great insight. The guy understands the human body. He understands anatomy. He understands pretty much the ins and outs of what it means to lift weights, to exercise, to lose weight, to an extent, right? You have to factor in the steroids. So you have to understand that when you're listening to people who take steroids, their lens of focus, their point of reference is through that lens, is through the lens of steroids, right? So not necessarily everything they do and say is going to work for you because they're on a different speed than you are. They're on a different gear because they're on gear. When I was younger, in my early 20s, your early 20s, you're high testosterone, you have all the energy in the world. Apparently, I had some setbacks because I was not naturally as energetic and gifted, even as I think some of my normal friends were. I had issues because I had concussions when I was younger and things like that. So I have somewhat of a energy disability, let's call it that. But I still had a lot of energy in my early 20s, and I was still very strong. And I played basketball, and I did my best. If I had a lot of motivation, I had a lot of ambition. If I would have had a great gifted body like someone similar to Mike O'Hearn, I probably would be a lot better, or maybe I'd be in a completely different place in life in general. Who knows? I might be worse off. I might be better off. Who knows? But I had a lot of energy, and when I was younger, I followed Arnold Schwarzenegger, particularly his book Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding. I loved that book. I read that book all the time. I would look at it, and I would look at all the golden era bodybuilders, which, by the way, those were the best bodies as far as bodybuilding in any era ever. Golden era bodybuilders have had the best bodies, period. Today's bodybuilders and bodybuilders from, say, the mid 80s and on, just grotesque, not good. Whatever they started doing to get bigger and more muscle, they look like cows on steroids. I don't know if you've ever seen a cow on steroids. It's pretty sick, and it's not aesthetic. It's not aesthetically pleasing. Golden era bodybuilders, yeah. So that book is full of golden era bodybuilders, Encyclopedia of Natural Bodybuilding. But if you actually read it and you read Arnold's advice, it's not necessarily good advice, because he's actually giving people advice to overtrain. He's talking about overtraining, and he's passing that off as normal. He doesn't give any cautions, or he doesn't say anything. Hey, you know what? This is what I did as a professional bodybuilder who didn't have a job. And you could argue and say he had a job. Maybe sometimes he had jobs. Maybe sometimes he was exerting a lot of energy elsewhere. Maybe. But he was as a professional bodybuilder, that's all you do. You train for a couple hours a day, you come home, and you just rest. That's all you do, because that's your job. And I believe he was paid for that. He was sponsored. He was brought over from Austria, I think by Joe Weider. Anyways, the point is that he was in the position to train like that. So he had overtraining. He sometimes did 2-a-days, 2 hours, 2 times a day weight training. I mean, that's a lot of load. That's a lot of exertion. And he doesn't specify. He doesn't give a caution and say, hey, this is what I did while on steroids. This is what I did as a professional bodybuilder who had nothing else going on but to take steroids and rest. Because if you actually, anybody who lifts weights heavy and knows how straining that is, knows that you need god-awful amounts of rest. You just need absolute rest. Unless you're on steroids, then it's a different story maybe. Again, it helps your recovery time. It helps your muscles grow faster, recover faster. That's why people make a big deal out of steroids. That's why people are mad at people who take steroids, because it is cheating. It's not the same. You are not in the same category as somebody who's natural. Unfortunately, it's becoming less and less frowned upon. It's becoming more and more normalized and more praised and lauded. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. It's bad for you. Steroids are bad for you. It messes up your organs. It causes heart disease, metabolic syndrome, etc. It is bad for you. Bodybuilders die early all the time. Just because Arnold hasn't died early, just because Ronald Coleman is still around cooking, just because Jay Cutler looks great, doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Doesn't mean you're going to have the same results. Your results may vary. Sorry to say. And that's why I never took them. That's why I was scared to. Not only that, because I knew that, with my concussions and limitations and disabilities, it probably would just mess me up worse or something. I didn't even want to go there, although I was tempted many times. I like being a natural. I don't even know if I call myself a bodybuilder, but I guess I would. But I like naturally lifting weights. I like being natural, because I know that it's going to, in the long run, I might not be as buff. I might not get quicker gains. My gains might take me longer. I know it takes a long time, many years, but I know that it's going to benefit me in the long run. My organs are going to be safe. My heart is going to be protected. Hopefully my liver's good. Won't have diabetes. My pancreas is going to be good, right? All the things it affects. Rich Piana passed away. I mean, look at that guy. He was a freak. He was a monster, and that's the way some people want to live their lives. They want to be monsters. They don't want to be normal. They want to walk outside and have everybody gawk at them. If that's your thing, go for it. And you understand that it's going to cut your life short, okay, go for it. For me, no. I hopefully want to live as long as I can. I don't know if I really am going to enjoy old age, given a lot of other factors. We'll see how long it goes, but I like the grittiness of being natural. I like that it takes me 4 days to recover, right? I like that, because it's like I'm earning this. I feel like that. I don't feel like I'm cutting a corner. I don't feel like I'm cheating. As far as Mike O'Hearn is concerned, to me he's a case study, similar, I mean, not the exact same category as someone like Andrew Tate, but I like looking at these guys because it's interesting to me how people follow them, and they're also very messed up people, right? There's something pathological about Mike O'Hearn. I like him, actually. I think he's got a good heart for the most part. I think he's a decent person for the most part. But I also think he's a narcissist. I absolutely think he's always been a narcissist. He's a very good-looking guy. He's very tall, very muscular. He's your typical Chad archetype. He probably had many women in his life. Women just gawk over him. And so when you're in that category of man, you're going to get some narcissism. You're going to get some ego, and he's always had that, and it comes out. It comes out. It just does. You know, but it's part of his brand, I think, at this point, which is very interesting. Again, like Andrew Tate, I look at these guys as case studies in marketing, case studies in psychology, case studies in human. What's the word I'm looking for here? Group psychology, why people follow charismatic leaders, why, you know, it's almost like cult. These guys are cult leaders. They have that charisma, they have that ego. You have to have an ego. You have to be arrogant to be a cult leader. You just do. In order to get people to follow you, you have to have something that is drawing. You have to have a drawing power. Michael Hearn has that, but his is, it's a type of narcissism, and so is Andrew Tate's, and so is Jim Jones and all the other cult leaders out there. You know, it's very, very rare for somebody to be very, very popular and not have a large ego. It generally doesn't happen, because if you don't have a large ego, you're not expending energy in order to get people to follow you. It's part and parcel of how that works. When you have a large ego, you want when you're, you know, eccentric and you're you know, outgoing, right? You're an extrovert, you're a people person, you've learned these skills, you've honed these skills. It's difficult to do that if you're not. It's difficult to maintain that if you're not a narcissist, if you're not somewhat of an egomaniac. He just is. But with that said, what I find very interesting about him is I like him. Despite that, he's likable. He's got some down-to-earthness about him, despite his ego, despite his narcissism, which I find fascinating. I find that interesting, because he's not your typical narcissist. He's not. A lot of times the problems with narcissists is they're too self-absorbed. They go too far. He really straddles that fence where he comes across as humble, and it's a kind of fake humbleness in a way. And I don't want to dog on the guy. I think he's a good guy. I think his heart is in the right place. I really do. I think he cares about people, you know. But of course he cares about himself more than anybody else, which is fine, you know, to some degree. It's fine. You know, he's not so self-absorbed that he doesn't care about other people. He's not so self-absorbed that I think ultimately everything he does is to build his brand, and he himself is his brand, which is fine too. You know, it's his livelihood. It's how he feeds his family. He's got a kid. You know, I don't know if he has 2 kids now, but he's got a kid. I know he's got 1. Cool. You know, good for him. And he gives good advice, right? Has he ever been honest about being on gear? No. And I think what's funny though is that he jokes about it and he trolls people, and he admits that he is on gear. He does. He admits it in kind of indirect ways, which is weird. It's kind of weird, but it's also kind of funny. It's funny, but it's kind of weird. Like, he knows that we know that he knows that we know, right? He knows that we know that he knows that we know, but, or at least he knows we know, right? He knows we know, and then we know, probably most of us know that he knows that we know, right? It's just what it is. It's out there, but he just has never admitted to it, which is weirdly and strangely also become part of his brand. The fact that he's never admitted to it, but we all know he does it, is part of his brand, which is very interesting in 2024. It's like, being genuine and being truthful almost doesn't matter in a sense. But I think the reason why, and I find this fascinating, I think the reason why with Andrew Tate, Michael Hearn, the reason why with Michael Hearn, why it doesn't matter is because he is a net positive, because he's a good guy, because he cares, because he wants people to be in better shape, because he wants, because he loves his sport. He loves what he's doing. And that, I think, is a win. I think that's a net win any way you look at it. The guy is living his dream. He's living his dream, and I don't think he's hurting anybody. I really don't. I don't think people are going to watch him and be like, oh, I got to go take steroids. And that's cool, because you shouldn't take steroids. I think that possibly some people will and be like, oh, you know, Michael Hearn did it. That there's somewhat of a danger in the sense that one thing he preaches is he preaches longevity, but that's a little bit disingenuous because I think this is where it can get mixed up, because it's like Mike O'Hearn's a good example of someone who took steroids for a long time and has had longevity. Well, here's the thing. We don't know what gear he was taking and for how long. We don't know if he's always on gear or if he cycles on and off. I believe absolutely he cycles on and off. And he's probably very extra careful about his cycling on and off, and when he cycles on and off, and how much he cycles on and off, and how he does it. And he's probably very careful about what supplements he takes to keep his liver clean and to keep his heart working well, etc. Does that mean there's not damage? Does that mean there's not a cumulative damage? I believe there absolutely is. I believe you can't do anabolic steroids, do those steroids. Of course, I'm not an expert. I'm pretty well versed in nutrition and the human body over my 20 years of studying it casually, not intensely, not like at a university, but I've casually studied it. I'm very much into supplements and herbs and eating healthy and nutrition and reading nutrition labels and what foods to eat and things like that. I'm very in tune to that, and I've studied a decent amount of books and read a decent amount. But I don't know a whole lot about steroids, but I know they're bad. I know enough to know that it messes your organs up. I know enough to know that you're going to have accumulative damage. You're going to have artery plaque. You're going to have, who knows the integrity of his veins. Who knows how his, his lungs are, or how strong his heart is pumping. Who knows? He could be gone in 5 years. He could be gone in 10 years. I'm just saying, and I hope he doesn't. I hope he lives, very long. But I don't know. I guess it's a trade-off to some extent. But I wouldn't. My point is, by saying all that, is I wouldn't look at Mike and be like, oh, well, Mike did it, therefore I can do it. Mike's, 55 now, or however old he is, and he's still looking amazing. I can take steroids on and off and look just like him. It's like, maybe or maybe not. Maybe you wouldn't last past 40. Maybe you wouldn't make it to 45 because you don't have the structural integrity that he does. Everybody has different bodies. Everybody has different genetic gifts. We all know that Mike was, and he himself will tell everybody, he's a genetically gifted person from day one. He brags about it. It's part of his speech. It's part of his spiel. It's part of his lines, that he's always repeating. I was champion bodybuilder at age 14. And, I have this, you're not built like me because I was, this He-Man from a teenager. And it's like, that's exactly the point. That's probably why you've made it this far, because you were gifted genetically. You have great natural genetics that have allowed you to live this long. And what's funny too is, like, people will say things like, oh, well, my grandpa smoked and drank whiskey every day of his life, and he lived to be 106. Does that mean it's going to work for you, too? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That means your grandpa was an anomaly. That means he was the exception that proves the rule. He's the exception where, like, yeah, he drank and smoked cigarettes every day of his life and smoked cigars and partied, and he was just fit as a whistle until he was 106. Okay. Well, is that going to work for you? Probably not. Highly doubt it, right? So if you watch Mike O'Hearn, he's 55, 60 years old, cycling on and off of steroids. Well, okay, but is it going to work for you? Probably not, right? So it's funny. I think his brand is interesting. It's part and parcel of selling himself. And does he have good advice? Absolutely. Does he love what he does? Does he love his sport? Does he love bodybuilding? Does he love what he does? Absolutely. Is that good? Yes, because it's going to get people to work out. I watch his videos. I find them interesting. I don't think there's monumentally groundbreaking advice in there. I think it's generally just good advice. It's nice advice. He teaches you how to posture on what exercises, teaches you how, rep range and weight bearing and this, that, and the third, and it's just good general basic advice. And it's not going to hurt anyone. And if it motivates people to get in the gym, Hey, that's great, man. And he was born. I think he's born and raised in Kirkland. I lived in Kirkland for about 10 years, Kirkland, Washington. It's a beautiful little city. There's a lot of yuppies. There's a lot of stuck-up people over there. So I understand. There's a lot of people like Michael Hearn. Actually, there's a lot of egotistical people. We call it the East Side, of Seattle area, the East Side, which means it's across the lake. Seattle's on the other side of the lake, Lake Washington. And I like it. I like Kirkland. It's a cute little quiet city, but it's a very rich city. It's a very upper class city. It's a very insular city. It's a very judgy, clicky. I don't know about clicky, but it's actually not clicky because nothing about Seattle is really clicky. But it's just Seattle's a very judgy city, judgy area, and Kirkland is one of the most judgy areas. So it's interesting that he comes from there because he really does have a lot of that elitist kind of holier than thou about him. But what's funny is he's not fully really like that. He tries to kind of be down to earth, which I like about it. He's personable, right? So he's got that Kirkland in him a little bit, but he's not so stuck up that, but he has to be personable because that's part of his brand. It's what he does. He's selling motivation. He's selling advice. He's selling himself. I am the prototype. I am the right. Look at me. I'm 55, and this is how he gets views and money on YouTube and donations or however he makes his money. I'm sure he does like personal calls, which is probably insanely expensive. People pay him probably thousands of dollars to get on a call with him or something like that. I'm sure he might be like a unofficial personal trainer of sorts. It's who knows, but I think he's been doing that for probably the last decade or two, making his money that way. Ultimately he's a net good. Ultimately he's a net positive. I like him. What else to say? He's not natural. He never has been. He's probably been taking steroids since probably age 14 or 15, which is weird, but it's, it's early, but if you look at those pictures early on of him, I don't think he was naturally that. And that's one of the things that he likes to say is like, well, look at me when I'm 14. Like, well, yeah, it's probably when you started taking steroids. I think I saw a picture of him when he was even younger than that, and he was real skinny. In one of the pictures I saw, he was like running a marathon or something. I don't know. But yeah, man, you don't get to that body composition naturally. You can just tell. It's not, anybody who is no stranger to weightlifting in the gym, how your body looks and your body grows, and it doesn't look like that without steroids. It just doesn't. There's no way. And I think everybody knows. And I think at this point, it used to be, what's funny is that, another fascinating aspect of all this is like, there used to be major arguments online about this. And I think because there was a lot of people who were on steroids and they wanted to maintain that, concept that you can look like that on steroids, but you really, or excuse me, off steroids, but you really can't. You can't look like that off steroids. It's not maintainable. If you understand bodybuilding and you consistently are a bodybuilder, you just don't get to that level. Yes, over time, you do start to look really good. Over time, you can get looking great, but you're not going to look that cut, that well muscled. I mean, there's pictures of him where he's looking almost like an 1980s golden era bodybuilder. Really, he had that much mass. So he cycles on and off of different things, and he probably tries to be as natural as he possibly can given the parameters of when he takes his steroids, etc., and what steroids he takes. He probably does less gear. I think the thing about the 80s bodybuilders is that even they were more natural than, I mean, once, 80, mid 80s, 85, 90, 95, I mean, it's over. They were pumping so much steroids in their body that they just look like freaks. They look like monsters, and that's not aesthetic. That's not really what bodybuilding should be about. I think if bodybuilding as a sport were ever to make a comeback, I think it's dying. Just my opinion. I don't follow it anymore. I haven't followed it since maybe Kai Green kept losing to Phil Heath. I think was what 2016, something like that. 20. I haven't followed this. It's just it's a dumb sport at this because it's just like these guys are just they're just science lab experiments, right? But the guys in the 60 in the 50s, 60s, 70s, they looked really good. Franco Colombo, Frank Zane, Serge Nubret, um, you know, these guys looked really good, man. And they looked almost natural. It was, and that's part of I think the lie about it is you almost felt like you could achieve that naturally. I remember one time saying to my friend, we were both into bodybuilding. I remember saying one time, "Oh yeah, you could look like Arnold naturally." I thought that when I was younger. I really did. You can't, but almost. It's almost like you can. It's not because he just looked because he cycled on and off, and I think he took a less amount of gear. I actually think, personally, I think Mike O'Hearn probably takes more gear than Arnold used to take. At least he maybe he takes different kind of gear because I think Arnold's body, that's part of the selling point in my opinion of Arnold's body and like the 80s excuse me the 60s and 70s bodybuilders golden era bodies was that they looked healthy. They didn't look all burnt out and toasted and it's just kind of a weird composition that your muscles start to take when you take a lot of steroids. And that's the cool thing about the 60s and the 70s bodybuilders is they looked thin. They looked almost good. They looked good, but they looked almost like, like you could do that. Like, if you just eat right and really dial in your nutrition and supplements, you might could reach that. You can't, but you can look darn good as a natural bodybuilder. You really can. And I don't even know. I don't follow natural bodybuilding either, but I probably should more. But you can just look darn good, but you're not going to look like 60s and 70s. You still got to get roided. And I think I heard Arnold admitting that at a certain point he really only took steroids when he was cutting or when he was, a couple weeks or months out from a competition, if I'm not mistaken. So he wasn't on gear all the time, and he'd have an off season, which is probably why he's still alive today. Is because he cycled on and off when he needed to, and he probably took a lot less than people think he took, right? And I think he said that a lot. He probably took a lot less of steroids than people think he took. I really think Mike O'Hearn takes more than he does. I think Mike O'Hearn probably takes more steroids regularly than Arnold took as well. I think Arnold cycled on and off maybe only a couple months a year. Maybe 3-4 months out of the year he was on steroids and the rest he was clean. Because if you see, there are some off-season pictures of Arnold out there where he almost looks like kind of chubby. He almost looks like he's just almost a different person. There are some pictures out there of Arnold because we're always used to, every time we see Arnold, we're always used to him being buff. But there are some pictures out there of him in the off season where he looks flat and chubby, and it's like, whoa, who's this guy? It's almost like a different person. But it just shows how hard he worked when he was trying, when he was on gear, when he was in there. He was really I think he would put 3, 4, 5 hour days, days in the gym, which is crazy. And the stamina that this man must have had to do that and lift heavy weights. I mean, he's a freak. He's a freak in the sense that he's genetically that gifted that he could put his body through that much stress and pain, where he could just exert himself for hours on end in the gym. It's very difficult even to do an hour straight, right, of lifting heavy weights. It's difficult. It's difficult to do. And most people kind of, when they go to the gym, they kind of linger and they sit down and they go get water, they check their phone, and that eats up a lot of time. You might be at the gym for an hour and a half, 90 minutes, but really you're only working for half that time. You're only actually exerting yourself for half that time, I bet. Most people, even guys who are in the gym for like 3 hours, probably half that time they're they're sitting down, talking, doing this or something, because you're resting. You're resting in between sets, and sometimes you take 10 minutes to rest in between a set because you need that time. But for Arnold, I mean, he was just at it. He was in there and at it. He was banging weights, and I'm sure he rested and chatted too, but joked around and ate up a little bit of time doing that. But he was really elite. I mean, he really. And so for him to put, when I read his Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding, I tried to follow that in my early 20s, and I couldn't do it. Like, I could barely get 3-4 days a week because he was talking I think he was doing, first of all, it's heavy. Everything's heavy, right? It's usually 8 to 12 rep range. It's not 15 to 20 lighter weight. It's 8 to 12 rep range, heavy weight, which is difficult to do, right? And the emphasis is on heavy. The emphasis is on muscle tension, time under tension. The emphasis is on really stretching that muscle out, really focusing on what muscle you're trying to work, and really blasting it. That's how Arnold bodybuilded, and that's why his body looked great, because he was really blasting the muscle. It's not necessarily the emphasis on stretching or functionality. Michael Hearn is a little bit more on functionality of the muscle. Longevity. He's not necessarily trying to blast the muscle all day, every day. He's blasting it, but not all the time. A lot of it's more like strength. He's more like a mix between a strength trainer and a bodybuilder. A lot of what he does is strength. He talks about it a lot. I want my tendons to be strong. I want my bones to be strong, not just my muscles to be big. I want to have longevity, and that's good advice. That is very solid advice, generally for people to hear. Yeah, you want your muscles to be strong, or excuse me, your tendons to be strong. You want your ligaments to be strong. You want your bones to be strong because that helps longevity. I would agree with that. That's great advice. People should follow that. But if we're talking steroids, it's a different story because, again, Arnold was on steroids, and what's he doing? He's blasting that muscle, right? So you can't necessarily always you have to take bodybuilders who are on steroids, you have to take their advice with a grain of salt. And you have to, be smart about it. How's that actually going to work? Can I do this? Can I go in here 5 days a week, do a split training, hit back and biceps, one day, the next day do chest and shoulders, the next day do legs, the next day take a day off and do abs, and then go back at it, right? Can I do that? Can I do a 7-day a week split? And this is what Arnold was talking about, and he really didn't preface saying this is what I was doing for my training and I was on steroids. He's just like, he just gave you a training split. If you go read that book, it's just what it is. There's just a training split in there, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken. He might have prefaced it and I just missed it because I was younger or something. But I actually don't even own that book right now. It got lost in one of my moves. But yeah, you can't do what bodybuilder guys are doing at the same volume, at the same level, at the same consistency if you're natural. Honestly, some days I only work out once a week. Some days I need the rest of that time off to heal my body. And I think also I'm a little different because I've got certain handicaps due to disabilities and certain things that I have when I was younger, concussions and things. So my brain doesn't recover my body as fast maybe as other people. But even if you're natural, you'd be pretty good, in good standing to do 3 days a week and leave it at that. 3 days a week, period. Hit arms and chest, hit back and biceps and legs and calves. And if you get all that in 1 week, you're gold. I usually don't. But here's the thing about bodybuilding, and here's the thing about your body. You don't necessarily have to do that. I remember, and I wouldn't even say necessarily, you just flat out don't have to do that. I remember when I was younger, I used to try to get that every week. I would try to get a leg day in every week. I would try to get an upper body in day every week. And I'd have a little split. I wouldn't work chest and shoulders on the same days that I'd work back and biceps, right? and then I would try to do calves and legs and abs in another day or whatever, and I could barely ever do it. You know, even in my early 20s, it was very difficult for me to do that because of energy constraints, because it takes so much to rebuild the muscle. It takes so much energy to rebuild the muscle. So actually, if you are going in, if you're, I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say this is the best rule of thumb, but if you're even hitting, I don't even look at it as a 7-day week. Here's how I look at it. I look at it as, oh, I've got enough energy to work out. I'm going to work out. I just go by feeling. And if I only got a little bit of energy to do a couple reps or a couple sets, that's all I do. I go by energy, and and this is just how I do it, and I do my best. And I'm not saying I look amazing, right? I'm not saying I look super great, but I see gains. I see losses in fat. I see improvements in my body composition all the time. Now, granted, I haven't been consistent since my early 20s. I've gone through depression, and I've gone through, like, you know, life happens. People have kids, or they lose a job, or they get, you know, sick or something, and then they're out of the game for a year or 2 years or 5 years or 10 years. That's life. That's how life happens. Life will come at you, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh shoot, I haven't hit the gym in 2 years because I went through this bad breakup, and I lost my job, and then I had to take care of my kid, or I had to move, and I had to figure out my money situation, and I had no energy to work out. That's life. That happens. You also got to factor that in. You also got to say someone like Mike O'Hearn has been lucky enough to be able to be consistent his whole life as long as he has. I'm not saying he's never had setbacks. I'm not saying he's never had problems and issues. I'm just saying to whatever degree, it didn't affect him enough to where it took him out of the game, because we see a constant, steady, consistent, maintenance of his muscle mass. If you don't hit the gym for 4 months, you'll lose a lot of your gains. You will start to look like you'll start to regress. It's not going to be fully, because, you know, if you work out for, say, 4 years, you gain a lot of muscle, and then all of a sudden you have a layoff for 6 to 8 months or something like that. You're not going to lose all the gains that you had in those 4 years. That's not how the body works. But say you went for 4 years, and you looked really good, got pretty buff, but then all of a sudden you didn't work out for 10 years. Yeah, you're going to lose. You're not going to look it's just the way things are. So it's like you kind of got to understand that the body is an organism. It's a living thing, and it's like, yes, you can build it up, but you can also lose it if you don't maintain it. Yes, you can look great, but if you don't continue to do the things you do in order to look great, you could lose it. But also, it does have memory. It remembers how buff you used to be. It remembers, it's like, oh yeah, that's right. So then when you come back after a layoff, it's not as bad as when you first started. When you first start and you're trying to put on muscle, that's really kind of the hardest it ever is. Once you have a layoff, and once you have some muscle and you're maintaining it, and then you have a layoff, and then you come back after your say 6 months or a year layoff, you're going to lose some gains. You're going to be like, dang, I've lost some strength and I got to get this back. But it comes back quicker because you have muscle memory, and a lot of times what you've built just doesn't go away that easily. It's interesting how that works. It's cool how that works. The body's amazing. Yeah, consistency and maintenance is the key. Is one of the biggest keys to the game. I'd say that's one of the biggest important things of anything you do, is being consistent. It's also one of the hardest things. It's hard to be consistent because you have ups and downs in moods. You have ups and downs in environment and circumstances, or ups and downs in your health, or ups and downs in your ability to buy food or buy protein powder or supplements to help you recover certain things. There's always variables, right? And these variables matter. They do matter, and they add up. And this is why people get mad at people taking steroids, because the steroid factors into those variables. If you're taking steroids, it helps you recover faster. It helps you keep and maintain muscle mass longer. It helps you, with your pump in the gym. It helps you be stronger in the gym, right? if you weren't taking steroids, you might only be able to do 5 sets of an exercise. If you're taking steroids, you can do 10 sets. It's like that. That's why people get mad when people take steroids, because it is cheating, quote unquote cheating. It is. It just is, because it gives you an advantage. Sorry, it just does. And there used to be this big debate online about, oh, you still got to work hard, and all this weird disinformation and all this weird, excuses people use. Well, you still got to work hard. Yeah, you do got to work hard, of course, but you're going to have the advantage when you are working hard. When you're working just as hard as somebody who's not on steroids, and you are on steroids, you have it like a, who knows, percent advantage, 60% advantage over that person, something 50, 60%, I don't know, but you have a great advantage over that person. Sorry to say, you're stronger, you've got more stamina, more endurance, you have better pump, you are more motivated, you have more energy, you recover faster. That's the thing with steroids. The downside is it messes up your organs. It hurts your body, so you're not going to have the longevity as that person who's doing it natural. And I respect people who are natural more. I respect natural bodybuilders a lot more than I respect enhanced bodybuilders who are on steroids. 100% I do. Because you're putting in the work, and all you have to recover is glutamine, right? And HMB and lysine and amino acids and protein, right? And leucine and collagen, right? You have these, all you have is natural stuff, which is what I love. I love that natural stuff. I love that I get to take collagen and protein and glutamine and HMB and these natural things. People might say, oh, well, you're not natural, you're taking all that stuff. Well, that's natural stuff. That stuff isn't messing with my body. It's not harming my organs. It's not synthetic. It's from the earth. It's from something natural, right? So I'm glad about that. And it's not on the same par. It helps you recover. It helps you. If I didn't take those things, I'd be tired for 2 weeks if I didn't take those things. I take those things because they help me at least get a couple of workouts in a week, and I lift heavy weights and I do my best, and it is what it is. But anyways, guys, yeah, Mike O'Hearn, good guy. I think ultimately good guy. He's not, trying to harm anybody. Is he a narcissist? Yeah, he's a narcissist. Is he still kind of funny? Is he still cool? I think so. Is he still a good guy? I think so. Again, there's malignant narcissists, and then there's narcissists who are just kind of harmless. I don't think he's harming anybody per se, unless people are like, oh, well, Mike O'Hearn is out here doing steroids, I could do steroids. There might be some dummies like that, but I think there's enough information out there where you can still make your decision, make a solid decision, and be like, yeah, this is bad for me. I don't care if Mike O'Hearn does it. This is bad for me because I've read enough. And if you're stupid enough to take it, it is what it is. I don't know. I really don't think he's affecting it. At least now, maybe not. I don't know. Because at least he's not out there advocating for it. At least he's not out here saying steroids are good, because there's some people who are. But there's also people who, I think we're living in a more transparent time where there's a lot of mainstream people who do admit that they're on gear, which is kind of cool. At least they're not lying about it. And I think many of them will admit that it's bad for you. I think many of them will admit that long term, it's not a good idea. And I think some of them, maybe you're planning to get off of it. I don't know. To me, it's just not worth it. It just doesn't make sense to me, because you got to do this thing that's harming your body. Because I'm just more natural, ultimately. I'm more of a natural person in my essence. I like being natural. I like taking natural supplements, eating natural good foods. I like that. So for me to put this foreign thing in my body that's going to mess my body up, and probably is going to make me, weirded out anyways, probably going to mess with my stress hormones, my cortisol levels, probably going to mess up my endocrine system, maybe mess with my pineal gland and my sleeping and all kinds of crap. That's probably already damaged from the concussions that I had. So it's like, why would I do that? There's no I don't think there's really any benefit. And plus, I think a lot of people who take steroids don't even look good. I don't like, they have high blood pressure. I don't think they look healthy. I think a lot, yes, you got a lot of muscle and that's cool, but who are you impressing? I don't even think women like that much. I mean, yeah, there's some women who like big old buff dudes, I guess, but you could still have really good muscle naturally. You're not going to be as yoked as the bouncer at this club who's on every steroid known to man. No, you're not going to look like that. But I don't think women like that anyways. I think a lot of the reason why men want muscle and want to get buff is for women. I really do. I think that's at the core of a lot of it. A lot of it. That's why you want to be buff. You want to stand out. You don't want to be a weakling. You want to get laid. You want to have a bunch of muscle. And that can happen. That can work. But it doesn't necessarily mean you have to take steroids to get that. You can look great naturally. You really can. There are great examples out there, and it does happen. It's patience and it's hard work. I played basketball. I put in years getting good at a sport, sucking at the sport for a long time. It takes patience. You gotta power through. It takes patience, and it takes patience. Honestly, it takes patience, and dedication, and it takes hard work. And a lot of people don't have those combinations of things. They don't want to gruel it out in the gym. I enjoy working out. I like it. I'm glad I like it, because if I didn't like it, then it might be a real hard time. I like lifting weights. I think it makes me feel good. I think I just enjoy it. I like resistance. I like powering through and being like, yeah, I did that set. Like, I'm not doing it crazy. I'm not out here trying to lift weights that are heavier than I should lift, but I'm lifting a healthy level of weight, and I like it. I like accomplishing, bam, got 10 reps in, bam, 12 reps, bam, got 14 reps in. I like accomplishing that. It makes me feel good, and it makes me feel strong and powerful. Like, damn, I did that, and I like having muscle on my frame. I like looking like I'm in shape. I like looking like I can defend myself, even though I'm not a fighter at all. But, and I haven't been in many fights in my entire life. Like, I don't think I've been really any fights as an adult. All my fights were when I was a kid, but that's not why I do it. I don't do it to intimidate or to look tough. But it's like, it's nice to know that people wouldn't think they could get over on you because, oh, here's a buff guy. Like, even though, like, if I were to come up against somebody who knew any type of martial arts, I'd be toast. And which is why I don't fight, and why I don't want to look for a fight, or why I don't want to have anything to do with fights. Please stay away from fights. That's terrible. It's just such a horrible thing on every level. Like, be peaceful. I'm peaceful. Like, so if you're bodybuilding so you can get in fights or win fights, that's a dumb thing. If you want to win fights, just study mixed martial arts, but I would advise nobody to do that, because it's like, you don't want to be in a fight. A fight is a terrible thing. But yeah, it's cool. It's nice to, and women like a guy with muscle on his frame. They do. But I think there's a point where a lot of women are like, they get turned off. They're like, man, this guy has too much muscle. He's too big. It's unhealthy. He's probably aggressive. Then you get into that territory where, like, he's scary. Like, you got to straddle that line of strength and aesthetics, right? We all want aesthetics. We all want to be sexy looking. We all want to have, and then muscle does that. It makes you sexy looking. But if you have too much muscle, it's like, it can be unsafe. Women, they're like, oh, he's too big. He might beat me up, or like, I don't know, something about it. It's weird. But I think they do get turned on by it. It just depends. There's a fine line there. But should you compromise your health for that? Absolutely not. You shouldn't compromise your health for getting laid. You shouldn't compromise your health so you can be intimidating. Really, a lot of it is just men trying to impress other men. Like, oh, look how big that guy is. Women aren't, going out and rifling through bodybuilding magazines to masturbate to bodybuilders. They're not out here, wow, these bodybuilders are so sexy. Women rarely, if ever, say that. In fact, I think women bodybuilders look disgusting. It's just not attractive at all. Like, it's not hot at all, like, to me. So if we are the equivalent of that, or excuse me, if bodybuilders are the equivalent of that, then it's not sexy. which is why you want to stay natural, because if you're natural, you still look sexy. You can put on muscle and still look sexy, right? But not have that weird, you look like a burnt piece of toast, or you look like a burnt piece of steak, a burnt piece of meat or something. Your muscles look all weird, and nobody needs that. Nobody needs that in their life. And I don't think women are sexy. I don't think women think it's sexy. All you're doing is impressing other men. Oh, that guy's so big. Wow. And some guys like that. They like going out and shocking other men. They like going out and like having people, men and women, gawk at them. Not because they want to sleep with them per se, but just because, wow, look at that freak. A lot of guys like that. But is it worth it to compromise the rest of your life? To compromise your organs and your future and your health? I don't think so. But anyways, yeah, enough about that. Mike O'Hearn, whatever, cool guy. Has his deal, has his brand, but he's obviously on steroids, and he always has been. And I don't know if it's sad, but it's certainly disingenuous for him to do that, his whole life. And you got to wonder, like, did people follow him because they really believed he was natural? I think this is why a lot of people will hate on someone like Mike O'Hearn, because at a certain point they were calling themselves natural, and that's how they maintained kind of an illusion. And this has been gone probably, I think that aspect has been gone probably for almost 10 years now. Like, I think people got wise and they're like, yeah, they're all on steroids. I think people just, the illusion of the doubt all went away in like 2014, 2015 probably, because, you watch the internet enough, you read and you learn enough, and you get smart. So I think people have gotten smart, and I think nobody's out here like, oh, Mike's a natural. Like, nobody's doing that. I think people know now, and I think it's just, and that's why people are talking about it openly now, because it's not making them money anymore. But I think at a certain point, maybe say 2005, 2008, 2010, you still maintain that illusion, and you were able to make money because you were trying to sell motivation to people. You were selling them motivation. Hey, I did it. I'm natural. You can do it too if you're just more motivated and get in the gym. And you know what? Here's the thing. I think that's fine in a way, because I think if it motivates people to go to the gym and they want to pay money for this guy's program so they go to the gym, I think it's a win-win. I really do, because you're hitting the gym, you're getting in shape, and you're not taking steroids. Great. Is that guy getting rich off of an illusion because he really is taking steroids? Probably, but at least there's a net positive out of it. At least people are going to the gym, right? At least people are going to the gym. And that's good, okay, so you're going to the gym, right? So great, you're getting in shape, and okay, you bought his program for $50 or whatever. Now, if you're selling your program for something insane, that's a bit of a different story. Like, be reasonable with your prices. Like, it's just a program. All a program is really doing is just getting somebody motivated to be in the gym consistently. That's all it's really doing. You don't need a program. All you need to do is be around some weights and start lifting them. All you need to do is go to a place where you can run and start running. Get on a bike and start biking. That's all exercise is. It's not that complicated. But sure, yeah, you learn about rep range, you learn about resting, you learn about nutrients, you learn about, what supplements to take, etc. But that's all it really is. It's pretty dang basic. So you don't need a program at all. You just need to you need a gym membership, you need to buy some weights, and you need to do it. That's it. But if buying someone's program, if watching some guy motivates you to do that, then that's a net positive. That's good. That's fine. If he's lying and he's on steroids, okay, but at least he's motivating people. Is he getting rich off of an illusion? Sure, but at least he's getting people in the gym. It's kind of a win. I mean, it's kind of a win. It absolutely is a win. It's just somewhat of a dishonest win. But I don't even care, in a way, because I don't think it's hurting anybody. I don't think anybody's like, oh, Mike O'Hearn took steroids and he lied about it, so therefore I got to go take steroids. No, I think if you're going to take steroids, you're probably going to do it anyways because you want to be buff. It's not because Mike O'Hearn's doing it or Arnold Schwarzenegger's doing it. Well, in a way, it kind of is, because you want their bodies. You want to look like them. But if you take steroids and you don't educate yourself and you don't know the risks and the long-term warnings, then I don't know, it's kind of on you, because you should do that before you put anything in your body. Whether somebody else is doing it or not. Now, if Michael Hearn's out here saying, I took steroids, but I'm fine, well, that's somewhat of a different story, because then he's advocating, for people to harm themselves and claiming they'll be fine, which is not true. But he's not really doing that, even though he's taking the steroids, but he's not actually telling people to take them. As far as I've never heard him say that. Now, you might be like, oh, well, the fact that he takes them and then sells his body, that might be encouraging people to do it. Maybe, but I don't know, man. I think a lot of it's in your own responsibility. I think that if you're going to do something like that, and I think it's such common knowledge that they're bad for you, that you kind of would have to be stupid to take them and not think that they're bad for you, I think most people who take them, probably 98%, 99% of people who take them do so knowing the risks, knowing that they're harming themselves, knowing that it's just a short-term gain, and in the long run, it's going to be harmful for them. It's like, why do people smoke cigarettes? It's not because they think it's healthy for them. They do it for the benefits. They do it for however it makes you feel. Why do people take drugs? It's not because they think they're healthy. It's not because they think it's going to... They know that it's going to harm them to some degree, but they do it anyways for the benefits, because it makes me feel good or whatever reason, So I think most people who do harmful things know that those harmful things are bad for them. I really do. It's just that they don't care. It's just that they're okay with the short-term... they're okay with the long-term drawbacks in order to gain the short-term benefits. Simple as that. So anyway, yeah, that's that on Michael Hearn. Appreciate you guys listening. Jay Lee, Northwest Podcast. Peace.